Today, I have the opportunity to speak to you about the long and glorious history of my country. I have the opportunity to present to you an ancient civilization with its wonderful and treasured artworks, to speak of proud and time-honored people who learned to live, love, and respect one another. That's the motif that led me to this particular topic. The history of Chinese punk movement in the 90s. And yes, I played that intro music just to confuse some folks. Alright. Born after the death of Kurt Cobain, the breakup of Sex Pistols, and the so-called curse of Ramones, I fully understand that I'm not the most qualified person, not even in this auditorium, to speak about this topic, but here's my 2 cents. Okay, so what is punk rock? Although defining a genre of music is as dumb as it sounds, here's the definition I found on website dictionary.com. According to dictionary.com, punk rock is a loud, fast-moving, and aggressive form of rock music, popular in late 1970s and early 1980s. And maybe to a lot of folks, that is only half true, because punk rock is when you take a perfectly normal human being, you add the leather jacket, the crazy hairs, and the heavy, distorted, cheap electric guitar, and you get this. Wait, what? By the way, that took me 3.5 hours. Nevertheless, punk rock started right here in America and also in the UK almost at the same time, although for very different reasons. The American punk rock movement started in a dirty pub called CBGB up in East Village, New York City back in the 1970s. By a group of young men who hated the mainstream music at the time, which I believe was disco music. Among these young men, there is the Ramones, which is the first recognized punk rock band ever. Ramones was started by Johnny Ramones and Tommy Ramones in 1974, popularized in 1976 after the release of their debut album, The Ramones. Much like the Beatles, who gave the blueprint for future artists to produce pop music, the Ramones created the earliest punk music style, which used triads with a simple but effective melody to deliver their message to audience in 2 minutes. This lowered the skills required to play music, which eventually gave birth to great bands such as Green Day and Nirvana. Across the punk in UK, the reason for punk movement was not as simple as the disco music. In 1973, UK undergo an economic depression. The unemployment rate was at the all-time high. The youth of England were angry, rebellious, and out of job. There, a band called Sex Pistols stood out, criticizing the powerless of the government and the hopeless of the new generation using their music. Artists in Britain felt strongly to their music, thus led to the explosion of punk movement in Britain. Punk movement didn't start in China until late in 1990s for a few reasons. First off, there's a cultural revolution that has been going on since 1966. Mao, the chairman at the time, used cultural revolution as a way to eliminate his political enemies and stabilize communist ideas. As a result, thousands of so-called bourgeoisies were executed by the governments, including some of the most educated scholars, scientists, and generals who dedicated their life to the well-being of the country. China was closed for 10 years from foreign trade and any form of cultural influences. Thus, as the death of Mao in 1976 marks the end of cultural revolution, China was ready for an explosion of foreign culture. The punk movement of China was born in Beijing under this background. The punk rock scene in China was started by a band called Underbaby in 1995. Under the influence of Ramones, The Clash, and the Pistols, they were the first band to produce Western-style punk music in Beijing. Their venue is always in a small club packed with audiences. To a lot of Chinese musicians, some of their songs' intro are instantly recognizable, kind of like when you hear the guitar riff from Sweet Home Alabama, and you will know Sweet Home Alabama. This is a bass riff of a song by them called All the Same. Fast forward to Beijing Wudao Street in 1998. A music club called Scream opened. Behind Scream, there was the Beijing Language and Culture University, which is a language school for foreign exchange students at the time to study Chinese. Because of its special location, it has more contact with Western culture than other parts of Beijing. Four bands often like to play scream. They go by the name A-Boys, Reflectors, 6ix9ine, and Brain Failure. People like to come to their gig not because their music was impressive. In fact, their music was pretty horrible. It is the way they dress and style that left a deep impression to people. Tina, an exchange student from Italy, named these four bands the Army of Boredom, among which Brain Failure stood out the most. When most of the punk band in China was still making hardcore punk music, Brain Failure has learned ska and reggae, which was brought to China by African exchange students called Rusty. Brain Failure blend these African music elements into their songwriting, making their music more creative and fun to listen to.
We're coming down, coming down, coming down.
As they gained their popularity, a record company called Bad News from Japan signed Brain Failure in 2003 and booked them tours all over Asia, United States, and Europe, where Brain Failure gained valuable performing experiences and more recognition. In 2007, the band officially broke up because the lead singer, Xiao Rong, has grown out of the punk rocker that he was when he was 17. However, Xiao continued to produce music, though in very different style.
北风在初秋的日子里吹得我紧张，穿着黑色的衬衫有些凉。
One really interesting figure Brain Failure has over the year is David, an American student at the University of Peking. David served as a bass player of the band for over 3 years and eventually has to leave because his visa expired. Though he lived a normal life after he went back to the States, he was a rock star in China for more than 3 years while being an exchange student. Another band that I'd like to speak about is SNZB, which is the band from my hometown city, Wuhan, sitting about right here on the map. My city used to be where people fired their first gunshot against absolute monarchy, and over the years, it has served as a military base during World War II. The city used to be in horrible shape because the constant warfare and the lack of regulation, which for a long time made my city the least desirable place to live in, and there's my city in 2015. In early 2000s, a band called SNZB were formed in this dirty, crowded city. The frontman of this band, Wu Wei, was quite a character. He started a punk band with his friend under the influence of Pistols and Remain, underground till this day. Members of SNZB are not just average punk musicians. All of them has come to meet arguably the best music school in China, kind of like Berkeley in the state. Because all of the band members were well-trained musicians, they were able to blend more music elements such as Celtic folks into their playing, which made their music sound less like Pistols and more like the Pogues. After all, what do all these musicians lead to? Here's a quote from the best-selling Chinese punk album ever, with a shocking record of 50 copies, not to be confused with 50,000. If criticism is the flash of rock and roll, punk is the soul, because they have learned to criticize even themselves. For that reason, punk musicians will call each other dummies. To people like that, nobody can defeat them besides themselves. And I hope the spirit can carry people of my country or of any other country through our hard times. Thus, I'm going to end with this line of lyric from SNZB's single White White. Allow me to cite this in Mandarin first. 我不会洒了我手里的酒，更不会松开我的拳头. Which translates as, I'll neither spill my beer nor surrender the fight. Thank you.